It's August 1st, 2026, and to be honest, I'm surprised to be back here with another presentation from the Ugly Duckling's Alchemical Soul Theater. As we can see from this slide, which is very busy, on the far right, we have a tree of life with a lot of tarot keys overlaying it. Tarot keys indicate the different paths that are being activated as I'm constantly, as of late, circumambulating Tiferet. I'm still circumambulating Tiferet, although what I'm presenting here may go a little beyond that. But it is as it is. I've been asked to present this, and so I will, with all the transparency that I can achieve at the moment. The circumambulation is a spiral circularity. In this slide, what I want to show is something that is very personal to me, and it's also an indication of how long processes can take. On the far left, what we see is a picture from my pilgrim's passport when I walked the Camino de Santiago in 2000. What is being indicated by the arrow is a stamp that I got in Torres del Rio, and that stamp, as we can see, is the centerpiece of the slide. And I received it after having visited La Iglesia del Santo Sepulcro in Torres del Rio, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's from the 12th century, and it's octagonal shape, which indicates resurrection and eternal life. And at the top of the church, we see a lantern for the dead. Burckhardt tells us that in the domain of the sacred, there is no chance, and things which seem mere coincidences are in reality preordained. To be honest, I got this stamp and I didn't pay too much attention to it. If you look to the left of the stamp that I have indicated, you'll see that there's another Torres de Rio stamp. It's from the same place. The stamp that is indicated I received after talking to I don't know what to call him, the caretaker of the albergue, of the hostel that I stayed in. And as I said, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. It was only about 3 to 4 years ago that it surfaced again, and I started to try to decipher the symbols on this stamp that says Revis. Here we see the interior of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And what I wanted to point out on the left, you see a larger um, detailed structure, and on the far right, I focused in on the eight-pointed star and the circumambulating circles. In the circumference, we see that they're interlaced in four layers with white and black. It's a beautiful sacred geometry, and this is the ceiling which is crowned by the lantern for the dead. I made a note here, says eight-pointed star, the four elements, and 10 concentric circles. This will unfold as this presentation continues. Ah, Humpty Dumpty. He's been wanting to be a part of this Ugly Duckling's Alchemical Soul Theater for a while, and I've told him to wait, his day will come. This time he forced his way in. It's not his day yet, but in any event, all I wanted to point out with this particular slide of Humpty Dumpty is that he taught me a great lesson, because as we see above, it says Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. Now, what's interesting is many people associate Humpty Dumpty with the great fall of the cosmic egg. I don't know. That may have to wait. What is of interest to me at the moment is that the nursery rhyme I just read never mentions an egg, nor does it ever say it broke. Humpty Dumpty as an egg was popularized by Lewis Carroll, and what's interesting about that is at the end, Alice always woke up from her sleep, and it turns out that her adventures were part of her dream state. Now, why was this significant is because something also helped me recognize that the fall that we refer to, the Christians refer to, that occurred in Genesis 2:21 was actually a tardima, a deep sleep or a trance that fell upon Adam. But the text never uses the word fall to describe the transgressions that occurred in Genesis 3, nor does the text mention that Adam woke from his deep sleep or that it left him. So the rhyme from Humpty Dumpty helped me recognize that we've connected dots by assuming what is not stated, but what makes our consciousness feel more comfortable. So Humpty Dumpty helped me reveal the true text that is actually signifying that consciousness is shifting from a state of unified vision to a state of division. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And this is a true statement. Underneath, I have the Hebrew equivalent to that. And it reads fairly, for the English speaking mind, fairly strangely. In the beginning, he created God. Then there's a direct object marker, the heavens and the earth. In Daniel Matt's Pritzker edition of the Zohar that he translated, there's a section that reads, the secret is Bereshit bara Elohim, with beginning, and then we have these dotted lines, created God, then I've put in brackets Elohim. With this beginning, the unknown concealed one, the hidden source of emanation, this is from the footnote that is put there, the Ein Sof, or Keter, created the palace. This palace is called Elohim, God. The next footnote says, here the name signifies Binah, the divine mother who gives birth to the seven lower Sephiroth. In a footnote 23, Matt says, Bara, concealed mystery from which all expands. If so, no wonder the same verb is employed to describe the creation of Adam and Eve, a further stage of divine unfolding. In creating the human being, God emanated and imparted this creative potential. From a Kabbalistic universe, from Warren Kenton, his pen name Seth Ben Shimon Halavi, we're indicated that he provides an esoteric reading of Genesis 1:1. In that esoteric reading, he relates the days of creation to Jacob's ladder. Here I have a few quotes from him directly that I'll only read certain parts that are important. In the first one, he talks about a great octave and a musical major scale. In the middle one, it reads, at this point, it will be as well to indicate there are at least three Kabbalistic ways of viewing the 7 days of creation. All the approaches are quite valid, depending on which way one sees creation. And then he goes to quote a similar quote that I just read from Matt's translation of the Zohar. Genesis opens with the statement, Berashit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz. In the beginning, he, the God names, created the heaven and the earth. Warren goes on to say, this is to say that at the beginning of the world of creation, the Hasidic attributes of God created, the first and the last do, or the variadic octave, that is Keter and Malkut, of the Bariatic tree. Here, Leonora Leet, in The Secret Doctrine of the Kabbalah, provides us with another interpretation yet. Bereshit, the basic geometric progression from point through line to circle, and then to the making of a radial arc point is ascribed a relation to the first processes of creation. Then she quotes, "The most mysterious struck its void, and caused this point to shine. This beginning then extended, and made for itself a palace, for its honor and glory. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." You shouldn't read Bereshit as in the beginning, but Bereshit. He created six. And in effect, you will find that it is written, He created six. The progression from supernal point through its extension into a palace, geometrically the circle. We can see the identification of Elohim with its third manifestation of the most mysterious as circle. This palace is called Elohim, and this doctrine is contained in the words, "By means of a beginning, it created Elohim." By means of the six, he, the mysterious unknown, had created. Elohim created the heavens, signified by the ascending triangle of the hexagram, and the earth, signified by the descending triangle of the hexagram. The esoteric nature of the creation account can be demonstrated by its apparent employment of two organizing keys, geometry and music. It's very similar to what Warren said. I'm back to A Kabbalistic Universe by Warren Kenton, and here I bother to look to its publication dates. Its original publication was in 1977. It was revised in 2007, and there was a Kindle edition in 2017. These quotes are from the 27th chapter, entitled The End of Days. So far, in the current cycle, the outgoing impulse has been accomplished with the aid of the Shekinah, or Divine Presence, exiled, as it is called in Kabbalah, in the most compressed of matter. At the present time, the return, if it is to be judged by the general state of mankind, it is to be seen somewhere between the central nervous system and the self, or between the Hod, I included body, Tiferet, and Tiferet, and I added chariot, of the great line of light on the central column, what I've always been referring to as the Kav. I highlighted where the ego is, which is the place of Netzach. This place, most of incarnate humanity at the level of the ego, displaces most of incarnate humanity at the level of the ego, with some above and some below. This is the reason I went to look for publication dates, because a number of years have gone by, and it could just be that things are a little different than when first published in 1977. But I don't have more to say on that. Reflecting on the various Kabbalistic systems and attribution revealed to me, first, they are more similar than dissimilar. It depends on our perspective. Significantly, they serve specific purposes in the divine plan. In my presentations, I focus a lot on childhood trauma and destabilization, and what I found is that they find comfort in strict, predictable mathematical laws and predictable planetary cycles. So I wanted to use astrology as to point out how someone who's been destabilized by childhood trauma finds comfort in these strict, predictable mathematical systems. In astrology, suffering, flaws, and destiny are not chaotic or meaningless, but we can attribute them to planetary movements. The primal divine feminine, with its organic, unpredictable, and fluid nature of the everything, can feel terrifying to a psyche seeking safety. Suppression of the organic, apparent chaotic womb of nature through highly organized structural doorway was necessary for the evolving ego consciousness. Concentric, omnidirectional matrices, ancient roots of the Asherah tree, the fluid, infinite side of the equation, the womb. Concentric, omnidirectional matrices, ancient roots of the Asherah tree, the fluid, infinite side of the equation, the womb. Consolidation of monotheism is a part of the evolving I, the ego consciousness. Exiled Asherah, the ancient consort of Yahweh, symbolized by living trees and sacred groves. When we banish the mother, the cosmic architecture changes into rigid, vertical ladder of top-down judgment. In southern France and Spain, Kabbalists, through the Sefer Bahir, the Sohar, restructured Jewish theology. Ten Sephirah's surface, the Shekinah, was explicitly feminine potency, as the queen and bride within the Godhead. Miriam's dance in Exodus 15, after crossing the Red Sea, Miriam leads the women in a drum-beating circle dance. Esoterically, this was not just a victory celebration, but it was an ancient, ecstatic goddess worship. The circle dance drives the divine consciousness back into a wheel, Galgal, of holistic immanence, reweaving the masculine and feminine poles of the universe. Here I just wanted to reflect a little bit on how creation is a reversal to the world of formation. In Genesis 1 to Genesis 2, what we see is a consciousness shift from macrocosm to microcosm, light, cosmic order, heavens, oceans, and earth, vegetation, celestial bodies, animals, and Adam created last. Genesis 2, we see a reflection from microcosm to macrocosm. The world of formation. Adam was formed first from the dust of the ground before anything else is established. What does the flipping of the order? What is it trying to tell us? Could it be implying that in the lower world of formation, human consciousness becomes a center point around which the universe is assembled. The universe is no longer just there, it is actively being processed, named, and distinguished through the lens of human perception. Before naming animals, Adam was pure, unchallenged existence, an unbisected androgen, blind to itself. Naming the animals developed objective consciousness. Noticing animals were what he was not. He was lacking an equal match. There was no mirror. Adam became aware of his loneliness. Male and female represented integrated yet unconscious, androgynous. Adam is created whole in a passive, undifferentiated, womb-like state. This last line is just to remind us that the womb state is not necessarily a vacuum. We're not just being held in a pleasant little warm, moist womb, but in our world of action, early life stress affects us in utero. With eyes to see, we realize that even way before conception, as I've already noted, but it's important to point out, Ha-Adam existed as an androgen and was blind to itself. And the Lord God built the rib side, which he had taken from the man, into a woman. In Hebrew is Rejiven. Its root is Bana, which is related to Bina, the mother in understanding. Note that his formation and restructuring, it was not a new creation. God separates the masculine and feminine, Chokmah and Bina. He removed Eve from Adam to create a mirror, a mate, Ezer Kenegdo, a helper opposite him, a reflective surface. Extracted and externalized, Adam can finally see her, recognize her, and say, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, Isha, because she was taken out of man, Ish." Man and woman equals recognition. He recognizes himself in another. The separation is not a punishment, but it's a mirror that equates with the birth of consciousness, with self-reflection. Adam was lonely, thus God puts Adam into a deep sleep, Tardema, removes Eve, and stands the two halves face to face. Only separated can they finally see, talk to, and choose to love one another. Separation is a prerequisite for relationship. In the binary system, only switches from 1 on to 0 off. We see form because light, 1, hits a shadow, zero. Combining billions of these simple yes, no, or presence, absence boundaries, you get infinite complexity. Love requires a one, me, to look across a distance, zero, at another one, you. The binary system proves that complexity does not equal thousands of different ingredients. Complexity equals relationship and contrast between just two, one and zero. Adam could not experience life as a pure, uniform one. He had to be broken into one and zero so human relationship, love, and experience could finally begin. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. The only fall is the deep sleep. The text never uses the word fall to describe the separation or the subsequent sin, the sin of eating the forbidden fruit. Tardima, in the Greek translation of the Bible, was translated to ecstasis, trance, standing outside oneself. Standing outside oneself. Hmm. Supernatural, divinely induced trance or comatose state. Adam was born male female with good and evil dispensations. The tardima was the means by which we externalize the internal world. Eve, who we call the mother of all creation, of all living, the mother of all living. Tardima is used 7 times in the Bible, and 6 times radam, its root, in 2 separate categories. Tardima, as God-induced, represents foundational conscious change, as in the formation of the bride, Eve. Self-induced, ego-induced, not sent by God, in the Bible associated with moral and spiritual peril, as we can see in the story of Jonah. In ecstasis, trance, did Adam dream or witness the splitting of his own soul? Destruction as a cause of coming into being is a remarkable publication by Sabine Spielrein. Division is the foundation of birth. Spelled with an E to remind me of the fact that the devil equals the eye as the organ of vision. The eye as the organ of vision. And here I have another couple of quotes from A Kabbalistic Universe by Warren Kenton. The first heaven is the Malkut, or the kingdom of heaven. We see it here, also highlighted with a red line. Vilon, or the veil of heaven, is the first level of spirit possible to natural man and corresponds in an incarnate human being to the highest manifestation of his individual self. Vilon is to the right of the diagram. To the right of the diagram on the left. On the right, what I have is and showing how it where we are on the entire four world tree of life, Jacob's ladder. Indeed, Warren continues, it may be said that everyone has experienced one profound moment when everything is full of light, as consciousness shifts from the level of Tifrith of Jazeera, the psyche, into the Malkut of Beria, or the kingdom of spirit. It is important to recognize what he just stated, that there are shifts that occur in our four world structure that we're not that we cannot be, but we're not consciously aware of which level or which world we're working in. That awareness comes, but as he states it here, these shifts occur and they occur in this particular says, in this particular instance, he declares it, we have at least one profound moment where this occurs, depending on who we are. Then he adds, then and only then do the allegories that have been handed down and set out here begin to take on reality. What's interesting, and I'll point out right now, is that in this particular rendition, Warren only speaks of Villon. He doesn't mention the paraquet. But the paraquet is very important and it occurs before we reach the Villon stage of consciousness. But that's an addition that is not in his Kabbalistic universe. I just wanted to be clear. So the place where these three lower worlds meet is Kether of Asiya, the world of making, Tifrith of Jazeera, the world of formation, and Malkut of Beria, the world of creation. We have a paradox on Jacob's ladder, and the Vilon and the Paraketh, though both veils are not equivalent to one another. I've indicated the worlds they represent by the colors that I've used to write them in. But the fact that they're not one and the same, and yet on the tree appear to be in the same spot, provides structural and initiatory difficulty. How can a single point simultaneously be Vilon, the lowest, thinnest curtain of the first heaven, and the Paroquet, the entry into the sacred heart of Tifereth? Jacob's ladder requires a radical shift in perspective and depends on which world of consciousness is currently operating. Need more knowledge and understanding. In this slide, we're switching gears a little bit to try to gain some of that knowledge and understanding that may be requisite for understanding this place where the three lower worlds meet. And we start off with a quote from Genesis 4:25. Elohim, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel. Seth is a direct replacement from Elohim to restore what was lost. Genesis 5:3. Adam fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. Seth equals the primordial image of Adam, spiritually whole, which we just discussed. Seth is born whole in Kether of Asiya, the highest manifestation of the world of action. which is at the point where the three worlds meet. The Messiah is the lineage of Seth, the uncorrupted primordial image. In our esoteric evolution, Cain equals our hypermaterialistic, aggressive survival. Abel is our passive, ungrounded mysticism. The development of consciousness is a constant dance between extremes. Seth represents our chemical integration. Seth equals the central pillar, where we balance Cain, physical grounding, and Abel, spiritual purity. God rejects Cain's offering, a heavy lower earth without spiritual elevation, and accepts Abel's sacrifice, shedding of the ego, the lamb. Abel lacked ability to survive the lower world. He was murdered by Cain. The spagyric, Hermes' staff, the caduceus, opposing cosmic forces, Cain and Abel, love and strife, sulfur and mercury. The caduceus, the two snakes, the polarizing forces of the universe. Unregulated, these serpents bite and consume one another in a state of eternal strife, forces that tore Cain and Abel apart. Seth's lineage, the rod, unchanging vertical axis of the spirit. The legend of the wood of the cross, or the legend of the rood. When Adam lies dying, he sends his son, Seth, back to the gates of Eden to beg the angel for the oil of mercy. Denied entrance, Seth is able to see the tree of knowledge and the tree of life seamlessly intertwined. The angel hands Seth three seeds from this unified tree. Upon return, he finds that Adam has died, and he follows the instructions of the angel and places the three seeds inside Adam's mouth or skull before burying him. From the mouth of Adam's skull grows a tree from which the wood harvested to build the cross upon which Christ is crucified. In Golgotha, the place of the skull. Golgotha, skull or head, spherical, round, rolling shape, shares symmetry with Galgal, a wheel, a circle, a whirlwind, or rolling thing. Esoterically, Golgotha links the cosmic throne of God and Ezekiel's cosmic chariot, the Merkava, a physical mirror of this cosmic wheel. To ascend to the level of Ezekiel's vision, the Merkava, the ego mind must die. Christ being crucified at the place of the skull is the equivalent of the crucifixion of the rational ego. Jesus from the lineage of Seth, the higher androgynous unbisected world of creation, manifests in three lower worlds, Malkuth of creation, Tiferet of formation, and Kether of action. Julius Evola, in The Mystery of the Grail, had an interesting section on Seth where he decries him, where he cites a book called Eclipium Veritatis, The Shield of Truth, from 1618, and represents Seth as one of the Rosicrucian imperators. Seth, Enoch, and Elijah are so numerated, who never died and are also thought to be mysterious initiators. A little later in that book, Evola tells us that Seth is equal to two opposing meanings from the Hebrew. That the first points to the Luciferian substratum, to the wild warrior principle that is destined through heroic reintegration to change nature and be transformed into a foundation. The second meaning of Seth is foundation, pole, the cosmic pole, having an essential relation with emanation of the power of the center. Immortals, they transcended death, assumed bodily into higher worlds. Does that mean they woke from the Tardema? Jesus, through crucifixion, attains eternal life. The crucifixion is in the place of Tiferet of Jetsira and has three main stages. The cross represents our lower psychic nature, the ego, our karmic load, our unrectified elements. Lifting the cross means owning our entire psychological vehicle. Vertical pull up the middle pillar. No longer blaming the outside world for your suffering. To lift our lives as a conscious offering. Carrying the cross, the painful and grueling journey, the spiral circularity, carrying our psychological burden into the left pillar of severity and the right pillar of mercy, weighed down by our own dualities until reaching the breaking point. Note, Jesus falls 3 times while carrying his cross. Crucified, crucified, nailed to the cross. 4 elements of personality: the earth, our physical impulses, emotional swings, the water, our rationalizations, air, fire, egoic drives. They must be nailed down, completely immobilized. Mystical death is unavoidable. The ego cannot enter the spiritual world. Personality is surrendered on the elemental altar, the cross. Titus Burckhardt tells us that when two opposing forces contact the vertical axis, it destroys the friction and it's neutralized. When two opposing forces contact the vertical axis, it destroys the friction and they're neutralized. The geometric equilibrium equals the rhythmic ascension, balanced double helix around the center. In Tiferet of Jezera, We must interiorize the raw, circular, aerobic energy. The serpent transformed from a creature that crawls into winged wand of spiritual awakening. The serpent is transformed from a creature that crawls into a winged wand of spiritual awakening. Elliot Wolfson, in Language, Eros, and Being, tells us that the ultimate goal of Kabbalistic mysticism is the restoration of the primordial androgynous state of humanity, where the ontic distinction between male and female collapses. Reversal equals the caduceus of Hermes, consciously taking over. The caduceus, the middle pillar flanked by the dual channels of active and passive psychic currents crossing over each other. The paroquet is where the caduceus serpents, the male and female currents knot together in Tiferet, and the ego is crucified at the center of the elemental cross. Seth, by Gematria, is 700. Paroqueth, the veil, as we can see here, the pay is equal to 80, the resh is equal to 200, the kaf to 20, and the tav to 400, also equals 700. Kaporeth, the mercy seat, of course, is also equal to 700. The same letters, just in a different order. Seth equals the veil, which equals the mercy seat. The paroqueth veils and separates the holy place from the holy of holies. The intercalated Jacob's ladder reveals the paroqueth, the veil at the entrance to Tifereth, is simultaneously the gateway to the Kaporeth, the mercy seat, and to Vilon, the Malkuth of Beria, the veil at Malkuth of Beria, separating us from the spiritual world. Quoting Kaplan's translation of the Sefer Yetzirah, they write that Teli is actually a place under the firmament of Vilon, and that it is inhabited by the humanoid beings, which deport themselves in holiness and purity like angels. The divine mysteries are revealed to these beings, and they have the authority to reveal these things to mortal humans. That Teli is actually a place under the firmament of Vilon, and that it is inhabited by humanoid beings which deport themselves in holiness and purity like angels. The divine mysteries are revealed to these beings, and they have the authority to reveal these things to mortal humans. Eliezer of Worms and David ibn Simra also wrote about this Teli under the firmament of Vilon. This citation has direct relevance to the Mundus Imaginalis and the Chariot. Jesus, the line of Seth, his death on the cross at Golgotha, ripped from top to bottom the veil of the temple, the paroquet. In Tiferet, there's an alchemical reversal, and the paroquet transforms into the Kaporeth, the mercy seat where God dwells. a little like the tunneling that goes on at the mitochondria, the quantum tunneling. Note the paroqueth and caporeth are spelled with the same letters. Pe, which is the mouth and speech, and calf, the hand and fist, invert places. Just below, we can see that Pe, the tower, is actually identical to the calf, just that it has a yod added to it. Some say it's a tongue, others describe it as a teeth or a tooth. But it's fascinating because these are our two Sephiras, Geburah and Hesed, that we spent so much of the last presentation discussing. And we're still engaged in discussing the energies of these two cosmic Sephiras. So the Pe is a calf with the Yod suspended inside it. Now, calf relates to practical action, the Yod on the tree of life to wisdom, the very tip of the Yod to Kether. The Pe equals spiritual quality, Chokmah, contained within the proper vessel for its practical realization. Another fascinating thing about the geometry of these two letters is when we look carefully at the Pe, which is a calf with a Yod in it, we actually see that this Yod adds a certain dimension to the white space within the Pe that reveals the form of a hidden calf. The relationships between Hesed and Geburah get more and more interesting. In Ezekiel 1, we read about the many-eyed wheels within wheels, the Ophanim. 9 years later, Ezekiel reports from inside the temple, suggesting that he has changed. He has been transformed. And now he doesn't call them Ophanim anymore. Now he relates them to Galgal, the whirlwind or vortex. This is in chapter 10, 13. According to Leonora Leet, in the Secret Doctrine of the Kabbalah, she tells us that Galgal equals temporal revolutions of the heavenly bodies to the ecliptic pole, and whose mythological image is the whirlpool. The whirlpool as a way to the other world. And whirlpool as a way to the other world, she adds, is related to the three mother letters, Aleph, Mem, and Sheen. The Sefer Yetzirah emphasizes on the triple factors of the Teli, the Galgal, and Lev, those points of space, time, where the great circles of the sun and the moon unite with the cosmic heart to mediate the process of spiritual transcendence. Louis Kaufman's work on reflexivity, knot theory, and self-reference is similar to the image of a vortex or a whirlpool, a recursive loop which represents observer in the observed, looped together. Kaplan, in his translation of the Sefer Yetzirah, describes the Teli. Actually, for the Teli, he has a very large section, and there's really no clear definition for it. We'll do our best. The Galgal, the sphere and wheel, and Lev, the heart, that Leonora just spoke about. Actually, she was one of his students for many years. The dragon, whose head and tail form the two nodes, is then identified as the Teli. Abulafia also identifies the Teli with the celestial knots. Especially important are the lunar nodes, since it is only at these points that an eclipse, either of the sun or moon, can occur. The Teli can then be seen as the imaginary dragon swallowing the sun or moon. The Galgal is therefore a cycle that lifts one up to the level of the Shayot. The Galgal is the womb. In one sense, this is speaking of the Galgal as a cycle of time. The present is the womb in which the future is born. Binah is the mother, and the Galgal is the womb. An important cycle is the oscillation between Chokmah and Binah consciousness. The first initiation into the spiritual domain comes through this exercise, and hence, as a Galgal, it is the entrance into the mysteries. In this sense, the Galgal is the womb from which one is reborn into a spiritual plane. The Galgal is the womb from which one is reborn into a spiritual plane. Back to Leonora. In the Kabbalistic Sefer Yetzirah, number is not only shown, as in Pythagorean science, to mediate between the infinity of sound and the finity of form, but to correspond to the heart in its mediating role between the circle, Galgal, and the line, the Teli. Now back to Kaplan. Lev equals 32 by Gematria. 32 paths of wisdom through which one ascends into the spiritual dimension. Heart equals scriptural heart of heaven. Fire from water. It is this fire of revelation that is said to reach to the heart of heaven. The heart is the king over the dimension of spirit, and one travels through this dimension by means of fire. This fire therefore reaches the heart. Galgal equals the intersecting four-dimensional axis, the cross at Golgotha, the vertical cosmic axis, and a horizontal axis spanning the material world. The crucifixion at Golgotha equals Ezekiel's multidimensional Merkaba, the chariot. Taith, Kiate equals strength, and the serpent, Kundalini force. There are three distinct geometries which represent three different stages. The Ouroboros, the serpent biting its tail. Cyclicity, the instinctual life force, the vital soul, the Nefesh. the mitochondrial ETS, the closed metabolic loop, the boundary wall of the cube of space, keeps you alive inside the matrix of action, the world of action, that is. At the lemniscate represents infinity. We see the lemniscate over the magician here on the left and over the woman who walks with a tame lion flanking her. The lemniscate represents two symmetrical curves meeting at a central point, harmonious balance of conscious and unconscious. The caduceus is the open vertical helix, ascending, descending the central column, allow you to transcend the paroquet, the inner staff of Hermes, the lineage of Seth, organizes the spinning chakras along your spine, the geometric sequence progresses from Ouroboros to lemniscate to caduceus. Circumambulating, we approach the mundus imaginalis, with the grace of God. Become open to receive from transparent channels. The imaginative perception is equivalent to the psycho-spiritual senses, where we perceive images in suspension, what are called imaginalia. Forms, shapes in the mundus imaginalis are not perceptible to the physical senses, but they contain extension and dimension, an immaterial materiality, a corporeality and spatiality. Henry Moore called it spicitudo spiritualis, as cited by Henry Corbin in Swedenborg in Esoteric Islam. Dante, in his Divine Comedies, referred to carne e ossa, flesh and bones. He coined a new word, trasumanar, and he provided different manifestations of what I will term physicality in the mundus imaginalis. They differ, and it's important to be aware because they refer to different vehicles in Inferno 8, the Purgatorio 3, Purgatorio 25 and 29, and Paradiso 1 and 2. There might be a few that I've left out, but I've given enough hints. Dante undergoes trasumanar in paradise, while Beatrice, his guide to paradise, stares into the eternal spheres, and he fixes his eyes on her, transforming from the inside out. He states he felt like Glaucus, tasting the herb that made him a god among the sea deities. Trashumanar. I read Dante in the Spanish edition. Transformación interior. Transformación interior. And I believe that the Spanish translator of Dante captured Dante's, what I would say, what intent. So it's Dante's intent through Oscar's visualization of it. Transformación interior in English would be interior transformation. Doesn't sound as exotic as transhumanar. I think the English translation of that I read recently is transhumanization, which to me sounds a little, I don't know. I prefer the transformación interior. But be that as it may, as Dante expressed, its meaning cannot be put in words until grace grants you the experience. Its meaning cannot be put in words until grace grants you the experience. But it reflects a shift in human consciousness required to enter this eighth climate, as Henry Corbin would call it, a place outside of place. The eighth climate possesses extension and dimensions, forms and colors without their being perceptible to the senses. On the far left, we see Asherah flanked by lions from an ancient Canaanite iconography depicting her cosmic role, which today we depict as the image in Tarot Key 8, uniting Hesed and Geburah, cosmic Sephiros. She tames, harnesses, and directs the vital force. The concentric feminine womb of creation equals the Asherah matrix. Dante refers to Ezekiel's chariot vision in the Purgatorio 29 to 30 in the first and second part of the Paradise. It's important to read those sections in full. His depiction of Ezekiel's chariot vision is fascinating and has some very, very subtle but significant hints and clues, of which I'm limiting myself to one or two. So it's interested, it is definitely worth reading. A must, I would say. Ezekiel's vision, he sees the kavod, the glory of Yahweh, today referred to as the Shekinah, the feminine face of God. Dante can only cross into the higher realms when Beatrice replaces Virgil, his former guide, through the Inferno and through much of Purgatory. Virgil, representing human reason, cannot cross the Paroquet. Dante, as a writer, was very bold. He represents Beatrice, descended down into the chariot. Because the light of Kether cannot be gazed upon directly. It must be mediated through the divine feminine mirror, the womb. The mother, the guide, the Theotokos, the mother of God, transports the cosmic fire into the heart of heaven with a look of maternal compassion. And here in this closing slide, I bring us back to the Iglesia de Santo Sepulcro in Torres del Rio, where 26 years ago, I received a stamp that, though subconscious, worked on me and worked on me until I became aware. And what I want to focus on now in these last words is pointing out that the lantern of the dead on the roof represents the telly, the cosmic pole uniting the worlds. At night, a fire burned inside the stone lantern, a beacon for travelers. Esoterically, its vertical axis pointing out of darkness to the eternal light looks. The straight line of consciousness, the telly, rising through the center of the concentric circles, the Galgal, guiding the souls of the dead out of the maternal matrix into the pleremic rest. Thank you. Blessings. Shalom.